you may have forgotten that there is a presidential campaign going on. I know the riots and the plagues and the giving away half of Oklahoma probably has you a little distracted, but actually we are in the midst of presidential campaign season, even though there's no campaign. Maybe there's no campaign by design. Maybe the fact that there's no campaign is helping one candidate, such as Joe Biden, over the other one. I don't know. Here to help me understand it is one of my favorite Democrats in the country, Jessica Tarlov, contributor for Fox News Channel and senior director of research and consumer insight for Bustle, the owner and operator of Bustle.com, Romper, and Elite Daily. And Jessica has been a Democratic strategist with Doug Schoen, where she advised domestic and international clients on all sorts of political matters. And hopefully now she can advise me on what the Democratic Party is doing. Jessica, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm watching this campaign, me, a layman, what do I know? And I see that the Democratic Party's presumptive nominee, Joe Biden, is not campaigning. He actually gave this sort of small press gaggle where he said he's not going to campaign, and he's sort of blaming it on the virus, and he says it's the doctor's orders. And now you're already seeing calls in the New York Times for there not to be presidential debates. To me, it looks like Joe Biden is trying to get out of the hardships of the campaign, maybe because he is famously prone to gaffes. Is my read on this thing too cynical, or do I have a point?
I think both can be true, actually.
Okay.
But I'm just feeling generous on
Thank you.
Friday,
appreciate it.
the sunny Friday in Hollywood. Listen, I think that there are real, genuine health concerns for him. He's in the most at-risk category, right?
Yep.
And campaigning is shaking hands and kissing babies,
Yep.
right? Both of which things we are forbidden from doing.
Right.
And you are correct that he has stuck his foot in it, a few times when he's out and uncensored, though I would also add to that he has had some of his most charming moments as well when he's out with people, especially when he's connecting about healthcare issues, right? Sure. And, there was a moment early in the campaign talking to a young boy who also suffers from a stutter. Those are the moments that really expose the type of person Joe Biden is and why a lot of people, even moderate Republicans, are now supporting his campaign. So I think that there's health, there's concern about him uncensored for, an hour, 90 minutes, whatever, for long periods of time, that exist contemporaneously. And I think that the Democrats really want to send a message that we are taking this virus extremely seriously. And the contrast between the Tulsa rally, for instance, and how careful we're being, we have a virtual convention that's going to be out of Milwaukee where the vice president will be, where he'll accept the Democratic nomination, but there will be very few people there, really demonstrates the seriousness of the pandemic in the minds of our party. And I think that's important. I would also add that an advantage that Joe Biden has that the president doesn't have in the same way in terms of galvanizing voters is he has such a strong stable of surrogates. If you look even at yesterday, so he announced his Build Back Better plan, right? His economic plan. Yeah. And he had Kamala Harris out there. He had Amy Klobuchar. He had Sherrod Brown. He had Julian Castro. Elizabeth Warren did an event as well. And so it's kind of like choose your own adventure for Democrats, right? Like you can get your favorite person basically every day doing something fun. And I think he's comfortable with that.
I think that's a good point because so much of the Biden candidacy from the very beginning seems to me that he's kind of nothing. I don't even mean that in a disparaging way. I just mean Joe Biden is this kind of blank slate, neutral, totally typical Democratic candidate. And so you can, if he relies on surrogates, then he can push, toward one demographic or toward one ideological part of the Democratic Party, or he can push toward another. And I guess this is the problem of the basement campaign. You're right that he has had at least a couple charming moments on the campaign trail. It offers voters a chance to see him and to connect to him. And he's also had many gaffes on the campaign trail. And when you just stick at home and you don't go out and campaign, you don't get either of those things. So is the calculation right now of the Democratic Party that the the negatives would outweigh the positives, the gaffes would outweigh the charming moments, and that does the Democratic Party really believe that Joe Biden can sit on his couch until November 3rd and then move from his couch to the Oval Office?
So I would push back on that. He's actually been out way more than I think folks, certainly on the right, are giving him credit for. You know, he was out in Scranton yesterday. He was out on Memorial Day. He went and met with George Floyd's family. He was in Houston. He hasn't just been in his basement. And I know that it's kind of a favored line about this. Now, he's certainly not walking from, you know, the White House to Marine One every day and talking to a gaggle of reporters that are, I understand that contrast. But I don't think has been as inactive as people would make it out. And I don't think the calculation is that it's better if he's stuck inside versus being out there. But I do think it loops back to the gravity of the moment in terms of COVID and the fact that Joe Biden's popularity stems from, and I don't want to say I could fully endorse your kind of blank slate candidacy argument, but I actually wrote a piece this week in The Hill about why people are enthusiastic about him, and it's because of policies. So Joe Biden is an amalgamation of Democrats' favorite policies, right? Like raising the minimum wage, expanding healthcare, having a public option, his climate plan, his jobs plan. And people on the right are animated by Trump the man. And on the left, they're animated by a collection of policies.
I would push back on that.
Enthusiasm gap.
I would push back a little bit. I know this is the popular view, even among people on the right, is that people just love Trump the man. I'm kind of more with Ann Coulter on this. Ann wrote this whole book with the very, very enthusiastic title, In Trump We Trust. But her argument was basically, people actually, everyone thinks you like Trump the man, regardless of what his policies are. But actually, I think a lot of people like the policies. He's talking about different things on trade, for instance, than a lot of other Republicans. They like the policies in a way, in spite of some of his personality issues. And I don't know. I think there's an argument to be had there. But surely you're right. The Biden campaign is a kind of amalgamation of all these Democratic policies that people really like.
Right.
On the question of the man, you know, we've heard a lot about Trump's horrible personalities, narcissist. He's losing it. It would seem pretty clear to me that Joe Biden today is not the Joe Biden that we knew 10 years ago, and he's not the Joe Biden we knew 20 years ago. Do you think this cognitive decline issue is, one, a fair argument, and two, something that's going to weigh heavily in November?
I don't think it's a fair argument. I think that if you watched him yesterday or the speech that he gave in Philadelphia or in the fundraiser with Barack Obama, like a couple weeks ago, the day he raised $11 million, I don't see that. He has always had moments of being a step slow. Some of that I think is due to the stutter and, you know, overthinking what he's going to say and making sure that he can get the right word. But yeah, he has senior moments every once in a while. And I don't think it's a real issue for voters, particularly in this election, because it seems everyone is hip to the fact that this is a binary choice.
Yes.
Right. In 2016, people flirted with third-party candidates. They thought, oh, maybe I'll stay home. No one feels that way right now. And if they are disenchanted with both candidates, which frankly is a lot of people, Biden is up something like 50 points in terms of approval.
Right.
And so I would push back on that. And I think we've talked about this when you joined us over at Fox, that I am personally very uncomfortable with armchair medical diagnoses of people we don't know. And that was true with Hillary when there was she had Parkinson's. I have never said I think Trump is suffering from anything besides arrogance. And I wouldn't comment as well on what I think is going on with Biden. I just don't think it's appropriate, and I think it's really dangerous, especially going into an election, to be having those conversations. And, you know, when Trump last night on Hannity said, like, you know, I went to Walter Reed, which we didn't know, and I had a cognitive test and it surprised them because I aced it. Like, I don't even want to touch that. You know, it's a ridiculous thing to say, but what do we know, right? We're sitting in our studios pontificating about stuff that doctors know way better than us. So
That's right.
I stay out of that game.
I have to say, Jessica, you have made a much better argument for Joe Biden than I think Joe Biden has been making himself. I think the Democratic Party would do much better if their nominee were, I don't know, say Jessica Tarlov instead of Joe Biden. But
maybe one day.
maybe one day. That's right. If they get lucky, if they get through this election, I don't know. Obviously, the numbers don't look good for President Trump. But in politics, anything can happen. We still have several more months. Jessica, thank you so much for being here. You can always see Jessica on Fox News. You can see her at Bustle. You can read her latest op-ed in The Hill. She is everywhere. Always great to talk to you. This video is sponsored by BlinkSale, the revolutionary invoicing software for contractors and small businesses. Spend less time billing and more time making bank with BlinkSale. Get a free trial at the link in the video description.